Okay, welcome. This is the first part of our maths functional skills session. So I've made it a recording just to give the sort of possibility to do it at your own pace. I know people struggle with sort of internet connections working on Zoom, so I thought this would help out. So there's around 10, 12 slides. I'm going to go through fairly quickly. So I would encourage you to pause the presentation whenever you need time to think, particularly to complete the task. So without further ado, let's crack on. So the aim of the session is that we should be able to subtract positive and negative numbers. So particularly we're interested in subtracting numbers where there may be the difficult one is really subtracting numbers where there may be a negative sign attached to that number. We'll also aim to be able to add and subtract positive and negative numbers. So we'll talk through about how we do that. And also maybe why you need to do that as well as we go through. So learners will be assessed on their ability to read, write, order and compare positive and negative numbers. Particularly the thing you're going to be asked to do later is complete these knowledge check questions. So the final slide, I've got a replication of these questions. So you'll see some of the questions already, take a little bit of the brain getting back into order again. We'll, over the next few slides, we'll sort of gear you up to be able to answer these effectively. So here we are. So positive and negative numbers. We'll start with a few key facts that you may have met before. So positive numbers are numbers that are greater than 0, which should be relatively straightforward for you. Negative numbers are ones that are less than 0, and 0 is neither positive nor negative. So quite a nice task or a nice way to look at the things that we're going to do today is to take this sort of track, if you like. So we can look at 0 being in the middle, and all our positive numbers are to the right hand side, and all our negative numbers are to the left hand side. So when we perform some of the early subtractions and additions, it's useful to have this sort of track in mind to be able to just sort of jump your way along. So it may be valuable to actually draw this out now for use in some of the subsequent slides. So it may be valuable to just pause the presentation whilst you do that. It could be even worth going up to about 10 either side. So in terms of context, we use our negative numbers in real life situations. So if we look at temperature, for example, thermometers measure, we traditionally measure upwards, but we also need to consider negative numbers. So when we get to winter, we see these minus figures, and we might see these minus figures being added to. So you might sort of say, well, it's the temperature is -5 out there, but the wind chill adds an extra -3 to it. So you sort of think, well, what way does it go? So you can look at negative figures in things like temperature. We might also consider negative figures in altitude. So the Dead Sea at Israel, it's actually below sea level. So the Dead Sea is really well known for being very sort of full of sort of minerally salts. You can float in the Dead Sea, but actually it's actually below sea level. So it's an inland sea or large body of water, but actually sort of dips down below what traditional sea level would be. And then also we look at our sort of historical records. So we might say record as things being sort of sometimes sort of a number of years before Christ or before the Common Era is another way that we use to describe negatives. Even in golf, so I don't know if any of you are keen golfers, but we might sort of say 3 below par would be recorded as -3. So at the end of a round of golf, you might see that someone scores, say, let's say they scored 68. That could be written as -4 or 4 under par. And we might also see money. So particularly as we all scrap around for money at the minute. Certainly my bank account is showing more of these negatives than I'd like. So if the amount of money in a bank account goes into the red, so you start going into your overdraft, then the bank account holder owes the bank money. So you're effectively in debt. So this amount is shown as a negative value here. So for this person here, they're £234.25 into their overdraft. So they owe the bank that amount of money. So we're going to start with a few problems. On the right hand side we've got our little thermometer, and you can see on the right hand side we're in centigrade. So traditionally we work in centigrade. I'm not going to complicate it by working into Fahrenheit. So you can see on that that thermometer, the centigrade goes down to -20. We have our 0 a couple of rungs above it, and it goes up to a potential 50 degrees. So here we've got a sort of list of temperatures across London during January. So you can see on the left we start at 3, it gets as low as -5 on Thursday, and then sort of doesn't get a huge amount greater for the rest of the week. So the questions are, oh, that was quick. Well, I jumped through a bit too quick there. So which day was the coldest? So you can see if we answer that straight away, you would have found that out, wouldn't you? So Thursday was the coldest. We can see it's -5 degrees. So then we start to get slightly more complex questions. So we're asking you how much colder was it on Thursday than on Wednesday? So have a little think about that question. So have a look at what Wednesday was, and maybe try and get your little line out that you will have drawn and see how many you can count across. So if we take that question, say Thursday was -5 and Wednesday was 1 degree, how many skips along your line does it take to get you from Thursday to Wednesday? And we come up with 6 degrees. So to get from -5 to 0, we've got 5 skips, 1 skip up to 1, and that's 6 whole degrees. And then the final question is how much warmer was it on Monday the 21st than Monday the 28th? So you're looking at those two questions. So you're looking at the 21st, and where is it? The 28th. So have a think about that question. So if you're starting at, let's say, -2, how many units does it take you to get to 0? And then how many does it take you to get from 0 up to 3? So you should see 5. So we go from -2 to -1 to 0. That's 2 units to get us there. And then 1, 2, 3 to get us up to 3 degrees. So there we are. So now we're looking at the concept of opposite numbers. So opposite numbers such as -19 and 19 are each the same distance from 0. So if you took time to do the sort of line that I suggested earlier, you'll see that if we have 0 in the middle, we can have -19 this side and then 19 up this side. So wherever you've got those two opposites, the middle number is going to be 0, which sounds quite straightforward. So here now the question is to add those opposite numbers. So if you look at -29 plus 29, what are you going to come up with? This should all be quite straightforward because they're all 0. So that's going to become useful as we work our calculations later on. So if we go one direction above 0, and we have exactly the same number of units in the other direction from 0, so we go positive and one side negative, the middle should equal exactly 0. So now we're going to think about adding with negative numbers, and this is quite a strange, a difficult concept to get your head around, and this might be a point where it really is important to draw your line out. So get your line ready. So you've got 0 in the middle, you've got positive on one side and negative on the other side. Okay, so however you do it, 0 in the middle, let's have a good 10 on the positive side and a good 10 on the negative side. So here's our line. So we can see if we start at -2, place your finger on -2, and as if you're adding, just jump 7 spaces to the right, that side. Okay, so you can see by jumping those 7 spaces from -2 onto the right, you end up with an answer of 5. So -2 plus 7 is 5. So here's another question. So using the same process, I just want you to work through this next question. So -4 plus 5. So if you haven't written down an answer yet, just pause the presentation and have a look. If you have, we'll crack on. So here you're starting putting your finger on -4. So the question was -4 plus 5. So you pop your finger on -4 and you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces to the right, and your answer should be 1. So you can just see if we started -4, we go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there's our 5. So you can see how that works. And there's a final example. So just have a quick look. -5 plus 3. So again, pause the presentation and figure it out. I'll assume you paused. So where are we going to start? Well, we're going to start -5 and we're going to add 3. So we're going to 1, 2, 3. So I'm guessing my answer is -2. Bingo. So we're now going to think about adding negative numbers, and again, this is where your chart, your grid, is really important. So adding a negative number has the same effect as subtracting. So you're adding in that negative skip on your line. So if we see you're adding -5, effectively we're adding in 5 skips to the left to your grid. So let's have a little play with this. So let's imagine we're presented with 6 plus -2. So have a think about it and think what is your immediate instinctive reaction. So there we go. So the answer is 4. So we're adding, effectively we're adding, or we're subtracting 2, should I say. So here's another question. 9 plus -4. So 9 plus -4 is effectively going to be the same as 9 minus 4. So you're adding that negative 4 skips to the left. So our answer is 5. So 9 plus -4 is just the same as 9 minus 4. So try and picture it on that grid that you had with 0 in the middle and 1 to 10 either side. Well, that won't be enough for this question. So now we've got -15 and adding to that -5. So which way are we going to go on that grid? So we've started all the way over on the left at -15, and now we've got to add -5. So what way is that going to go? So you should see we're going to add a further 5 negative steps. So we're going to end up with minus 20. So if you imagine someone says it's minus 15 degrees out there and the wind chill is going to add minus 5, then effectively you're skipping consistently to that left side. So the temperature is going to feel like minus 20. And now we're starting to get difficult. So we're going to start subtracting with negative numbers. So when we're subtracting, we move to the left. So we've got an example here. Let's say 5. Here we are. Let's say we're starting at 5 and we're going to minus 8. So that should be straightforward. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Bingo. So you place your finger on the 5 and we're going all the way to the left, and you can see we've ended up with minus 3. So well done us. Oh, there we are. Now, here's an example. I just want you to work this out yourself. 2 minus 7, so put your finger on the 2, figure out what 7 is. So you should see. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we go all the way to the left and come up with minus 5. And here's a strange example, because now what we're working on is minus 3 minus 2. So what are you going to do? So we're going to start here. So how are you going to calculate that? Minus 3 minus 2. So let's see how we get there. So here we still place our finger on that minus 3, but we're subtracting that 2. So we're going to still jump to the left. So we're going to jump 1, 2 places, and we end up in minus 5. So if we think about that principle that we showed earlier, we can still subtract a negative number and it has the same effect of adding. So if I've got, say for example, well, let's get straight into the questions. So here we've got an example where we've got 7 minus minus 2. So think about where you'd be on your grid. So the 7 would be over on the right hand side. And so if we're looking at that positive figure, what happens when we take away minus 2 from that figure? Are we going to go up to 9 or down to 5? Have a think. So we're taking away 2 negative figures. So we go up to 9. So it has the same effect as adding 2. So here's another one. 10 minus minus 4. Again, has the same effect as adding a positive because we're taking away that shift that was going to the left. So here's a question. Minus 9 minus minus 5. So think about your grid. Pop your finger on minus 9, so you're all the way over that left hand side, and now you're skipping. So what way is it going to go? So we should go to minus 4. So a minus 9 minus minus 5 has the same effect as adding 5 because you're taking off those 5 negative points. So now, starting to mix it, so you're adding and subtracting with negative numbers. So, here's your task. is I want you to work out all of those. So I'm going to pause, well, you're going to pause the presentation and get your answers in place. Okay, so 3, 2, 1, pause. I'll count you back in. So you've hopefully had a chance to look at the questions. So if we do a reveal, we can see the answers there. So check your answers across. If you've got any wrong, get out your grid, find out what you've done wrong. So we can see our way down. So we can see 8 minus -2 has the same effect as going from 8 to +2. We can see that 7 adding -12 has the same effect as going 7 minus 12. We can see that 4 minus -2 has the same effect as adding 2. 17 minus 20 should be pretty straightforward. -2 plus -5 plus -2 is the same effect as taking away 2. So -5 minus 2 goes all the way back to -7. And then lastly, -9 minus -3 has the same effect as taking -9 plus 3. So we're heading towards 0, but we're still not quite got there. So we're still at -6. So again, if any of those don't make sense, get your grid out, trace your picture along it. What am I doing? How am I skipping along? So here's a list of numbers. What are we going to do with them? Write down 2 numbers from the list that add up to -5. So that's your job. Pause the presentation now. So there's your answers. -5 plus 0, or -9 plus 4. So now you're asked to write down 2 numbers from the list that have a difference of 13. So pause the presentation and try and figure it out. So a good idea might be to start with one of the numbers that's furthest to the left, furthest into the negative. So you might start with maybe a -9 and think, well, have I got the numbers the other side to make up a difference between those numbers of 13? Let's have a look. There we go, -9 and +4. So we've got 13 jumps between those numbers on your grid. So here's a challenge question. So I'm gonna pose it and you're gonna pause the presentation. So Emma runs a beauty salon. She's currently overdrawn. Her balance is -500, so she's £500 in the red. She's got an agreed overdraft of £1,500. So the overdraft is the sort of money that the bank is kind of willing to kind of lend you just to keep you going. And here she's gone £500 into her overdraft. But once it gets to 1,500, that's her credit gone. So here's the questions. How much will Emma have in credit in her account after she deposits £750 into it? So she's £500 down. She's going to put £750 into her bank. What's it going to say on her bank statement? So just pause the presentation whilst you figure that out. So here's the answer once you unpaused. So she's started with -500. She's added 750, so she was all the way onto her left-hand column, wasn't she? Her negative numbers. She's added a good watch, 750 quid, but she's only £250 in credit. So in 2 days' time, the bills listed in the table will be taken out from the same bank account. Now, will there be enough in the account using her overdraft to cover the outgoings. So let's have a look. Just seeing if I can move this. I think I can. So I'm just going to pause. So the staff wages are £900. So the question is, will there be enough in the account using her overdraft to cover the outgoings? So pause the presentation and crack and have a go. So the answers here: £650 plus 150 plus 200 plus 150 plus 900 is £2,050. So the money available in the account was the £250 previous, and now are £1,500. Added together, that's £1,750, and so £2,050 will be paid, but there's only £1,750 available, so there's not enough to cover the outgoings. So here's the outcomes of the session. You should be able to subtract positive and negative numbers, but you can also aim to add and subtract positive and negative numbers. So you should also be able to, well, we're going to assess you on your reading, writing and ability to compare positive and negative numbers. But importantly, you're going to complete these knowledge check questions. So I want you to pause the presentation. I've actually sent this also, but you're going to complete these questions and then record them under the title MA1. So you've just got A to F part 1, A to E part 2 and A to F part 3. So when they're complete, send them in to me and we'll check them out. Thanks very much.